Okay, everybody, Mr. K here again. We're going to talk a little bit today about fasteners, and that's a very generic term, as you can see by the picture. And that could cover bolts, nuts, rivets, adhesives, Velcro, anything that locks things together. We're just going into some basics today. Bolts, nuts, and washers. Washers aren't really fasteners, but they kind of go along with what we're talking about, so we're gonna run them into it today. All right. So, fastener basics, again, bolts, nuts, and washers. Okay, hopefully you're familiar with those. If not, you will be after this. Okay, bolt types. This is going to be our most common type of bolt. You see them everywhere. They're on probably every machine, every vehicle you're ever going to work on, even brand new cars that have all the fancy stuff, even Volvos that have crazy 13-point bolt heads on their engines and stuff like that. You're still going to find a plain old hex head bolt probably on anything you work on. They're probably the most common in the world. They're cheap to manufacture. You see them everywhere. Okay, great thing about them, especially for you guys, is they work with basic sockets, wrenches, even pliers if you have to. They're a lot of things on the side of the road. You can get a hex head bolt out. You can work on it. Not a big deal if you got to work on a machine with very few tools or cheap tools. And it can also be called hex screws. Okay, I didn't put it in here. It can also be called six point head bolts or 6-point bolts. While we're on that topic, let's talk about bolts versus screws. Okay. What I'm about to tell you is the opinion of the FAA. And if you don't know what the FAA is, that's Federal Aviation Administration. They govern aircraft and all the maintenance for aircraft, which is, some of you know, that's what I went to school for. And also the ASC, Automotive Service Excellence Institute, and as well as if you go on to a website that sells bolts and screws, and I'm not talking about Ace Hardware, I'm talking about a place like a high-end Fastenal, that type of place. If you really go digging, this is the definition they're going to tell you. Okay, a screw is something that goes into a part to hold it together. All right, it threads into something. A bolt is something that has a nut on the other side. So if you take this exact fastener right here, notice I'm not calling it a bolt or a screw, it's a fastener. Well, heck, let's call it a bolt. And you screw that into here in the engine, it becomes a screw. Okay, if you take this screw out of the engine and you find a nut that fits the other end of it and use it to hold two boards together, it has now become a bolt. All right. Now, that being said, though, if you go to Ace Hardware and you say, hey, I need this, to me, this looks like about maybe a 3/8 by 6-inch fastener, and you say, I need a 3/8 by 6-inch screw, they're not going to have any idea what you're talking about, or they're going to think you're crazy. You need to say bolt. So, but just if you really want to get technical, that's a screw and that's a bolt. Okay. All right. Let's talk about another bolt type. What kind of bolt is this? What are we looking at? Carriage bolt. Okay. Carriage bolts are found in a few spots, but namely trailer hitches, okay, frames, truck beds. This is probably the most common one. Look at that. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, you can see carriage bolts. Carriage bolts have to lock into whatever the base material is. There has to be a square in there for them to lock into, or else they'll spin, because you can't hold on the top of them with a wrench or pliers. Okay, but they're great for something like a truck bed where you need it to be smooth, so you can slide a sheet of plywood in there without getting it all chewed up. Also called deck bolts, decking bolts, some people call them. Okay, here's another one you're going to see a lot. You're probably going to see this on newer cars, and I guess when I say newer, I'm talking maybe 2005 and newer. Also, foreign cars seem to be a big fan of these. I'm not sure why. And you see them a lot on four-wheelers, snowmobiles, that type of thing. Allen head bolt is, I guess, the common man's name for it. Also, socket head screw, socket cap screw, internal hex screw, or internal hex bolt. And you see them used in tight areas. So again, like in this, looks like a transmission case here from a snowmobile. It's a real tight spot. They want that bolt to fit down inside of that little recessed area of the tranny case. And of course, you need a hex key or an Allen wrench to tighten or to loosen that. Big thing when I was at Chrysler, I asked, so why do we even use these? I hate working on cars that have these. Why do we use them on new Chryslers? They said it was easier for the robots to grab and easier for the machines in the assembly line to put the cars together. So a little background knowledge for you. Okay, so this one, eye bolts. Okay, this isn't necessarily as applicable to automotive service, but they're just everywhere. And the environment we're in, you're going to see them, and eventually you're going to have to go to the hardware store and ask for one. So I'd like you to know what they're called. It's an eye bolt. Again, you see them in trailers and heavy equipment. Here's one on a boat trailer. It's using to hook a strap onto. Okay. This you're going to see a lot. Exhaust systems, holding on an axle. It's in the shape of a U. That should give you a hint. U-bolts. Okay. Now, you're not supposed to reuse these on axles. All right. And that's an ASE test question. You do not reuse U-bolts. If you have to take an axle off and you loosen these, you got to retighten them because these are stretched. Once you tighten them, they're stretched. If you tighten to the correct torque, and you're not supposed to re-stretch them. Threaded rods, okay, also called all thread. That's what they look like in the store. People use them to lock stuff, heavy equipment down, or big brackets down to the ground. A lot of times they're used to lock pipes together. They're kind of nice because you can just cut them to whatever length you need. Sorry, I went a little fast on that. All right, this time I'm gonna say go ahead and stop, pause my video, and either punch this URL into your browser or search for this on YouTube, largest socket precision in manufacturing, Snap-on tools. And that'll give you a little break from the presentation, and it's a pretty neat video. Okay, you're back to my video now. We're gonna keep on rolling here. Let's talk about nuts. Everyone's nuts. This is gonna be your most common type, just a hex nut, okay, just like a hex bolt. Again, you're going to see these everywhere. And they're going to be made of different things. Most of what you see is going to be made of steel, but once in a while you'll see stainless. You even see brass. Brass hex nuts is a big thing on exhaust systems because they do not, over the years and years of heat cycling and all the salt spray coming up from the road and all that type of thing, they don't seize up like stainless or steel does. Steel rusts up on exhaust, and then stainless galls up, seizes up. So you'll see brass. How about this one? Nylon ring lock nut, also called a nylon lock nut. Okay. Notice it's just a regular hex nut, but it's got this little encapsulated piece of nylon here. So when you install them on an area that vibrates that nut would ordinarily rattle off of, when you install them, the bolt actually cuts new threads in this nylon. I shouldn't say it cuts, it presses new threads in there, and it creates friction. It's hard to get the nut on and off. But you can't use it in high heat areas because you've got a piece of plastic in there that's holding your nut on. And you're not supposed to reuse them either. If you reuse them, every time you reuse them, this will get a little less and less effective. And I've reused these kind of lock nuts, and I can just tell you that you might get away with it twice, but after that, it's just going to rattle off. Here's another kind of lock nut, prevailing torque lock nut, also called a self-clinching nut. These are probably the most expensive, best kind, I guess, if I had to pick one. These are the kind you see on airplanes. Okay, they're not a true circle. They might be a triangle shape like these are, that's threaded, or they may be a circle that has a dent in one side. But the point is, it's really hard, a lot of friction in putting these on. And you see them on exhaust systems a lot because exhaust systems are just notorious for nuts rattling off. Okay, using high vibration areas, and of course they're high heat capable. And they can be reused, so they're expensive. All right. I don't remember visiting Green Bay. Okay. K-lock nuts. Some people also call these KEP nuts, K-E-P nuts. Some people call them captured lock nuts, or let me think, captured washer lock nuts, because the washer is captured and it's stuck on the washer. You're technically not supposed to reuse these. Again, people do. Same thing, high vibration areas, but you're not supposed to reuse them. Because what happens is as you tighten these little tabs get smashed into the metal, and they actually kind of dig into whatever metal you're tightening against, and that helps it to not come loose. Washers. Okay, we got front load washers, you got top load washers, you got dishwashers. All right, if you didn't laugh, then you must be asleep, or the joke's just that bad. I don't know, probably both. Okay, washer types. So, a lot of different types of washers. This chart goes on and on and on, by the way. I'm going to tell you that really all we're going to talk about today is just a flat washer and a spring washer, or spring split ring lock washer, because that's most of what you're going to see. Okay, here's your plain flat washer. Again, this is just used to spread the load of that bolt or nut over the material, so that bolt doesn't crush the material, spreads the load out to a wider area. And I think this is kind of funny. They come in metric or standard. If you go to Menards or you go to Ace, you can ask for a 1-inch. Say I need a 1-inch diameter lock washer, or 1-inch diameter flat washer, or you can say I need a 24 millimeter flat washer, and or whatever it is they come in. But they do come in metric or standard. Okay, this is another kind of lock washer. Split lock washer. Makes sense, right? It's split. Suitable for high temp locations. I just threw that in there because, of course, it's just all steel, so it's not going to hurt it if it's up against an exhaust manifold. And you can reuse them. And I've reused these dozens of times. If I have a part that I take on and off a lot, and I guess one example I can think of is on a trailer. Like I have a trailer jack that I just can't decide where I want it. I keep moving it around. Or maybe let's say even a spare tire holder for a trailer. Spare tire, you take it on, you take it off. You know, you do that over the course of 10 years, probably done that 6 times. And it just doesn't wear out. You can just keep reusing them. Okay, at this time, need you to complete your assignment on Fastener ID. It's going to be the if there's part 1, part 2. This is just part 1. This is just the beginning one on bolts, nuts, and washers. Alrighty, thank you, and have a good day.